One of Ireland's most enduring legends is the Banshee. In fact, next to the leprechaun, she is probably the most recognisable figure of Irish folklore throughout the world. But what is she? Who is she? And is she real? We'll delve into the dark world of the Banshee. A banshee is a mythological Irish fairy or spirit whose eerie scream is believed to be a warning of imminent death. The high-pitched wail of the banshee is so piercing, it chills you to the bone. The banshee's shrieks can be heard, usually in the middle of the night when someone is close to death. Legend has it that if she is seen, the banshee will vanish in a cloud of mist. The name Banshee comes from the Old Irish phrase Banshee, Ban meaning woman, and she, the fairy mounds, so it's woman of the fairy mounds. The Banshee's scream is also known as cuina, the Irish word for crying. Banshees are, in and of themselves, harmless. They are an omen and a warning of death, but do not actually cause death. So what does a banshee look like? Traditionally, a banshee is depicted as a floating female spirit with long flowing hair, who screams throughout the night. She can appear as a beautiful, pale, enchanting woman with long red or silver hair, wearing a white or silver dress. Sometimes she can be seen grooming her hair with a silver comb. She can also take the form of an old woman, dressed in black, with long grey hair and a veil over her face. She can have frightening blood-red eyes, and can, in some cases, even appear as a headless woman carrying a bowl of blood. She can take the form of a washerwoman, washing the blood-stained clothes of those who are dying. The Irish Banshee is known locally by many names: Hag of the Mist, Hag of the Black Head, and the Washerwoman, or the Washer at the Ford. Whatever her form, the mythical Banshee is renowned for her terrifying scream. Many believe that the tale of the Banshee evolved from Irish custom of the lament in the 8th century. Women would sing a sorrowful song at funerals to grieve the dead. This mournful lament would be heard across the village, indicating that someone had passed away. These funeral singers were called keeners, and the Banshee myth emerged from here. According to Old Irish folklore, a banshee is usually found near graveyards, fairy rings, or ancient Irish ruins. The belief in a female goddess of death, however, predates this by millennia, and it is likely that the Banshee legend has its origins in the war goddesses of the old Irish legends. So, are banshees good or bad? Not all banshees are to be feared. Many believe that every Irish family has its own banshee, and that these spirits not only warn of imminent death, but also watch over the family members in life and death. Some say that the banshee ensures that the deceased passes safely to the other side. Again, a connection to the old goddesses of death. In Irish culture, women played a major part in birth and death, in their capacity as nurturers, and in the rituals surrounding these events. So it's unsurprising that the goddesses associated with birth, healing, and death were all female deities. Many believe these banshees appear as beautiful women, singing a mournful song, filled with love and concern for their families. Some ancient Irish folklore claim that the Banshee could only wail for 5 prominent Irish families: the O'Neills, O'Connors, O'Briens, Kavanaghs and O'Grady's. The more fearful banshees appear as frightening old witches who emit howls that shatter glass and torment the living. Some say that these creatures are so filled with hatred that to look at them directly will cause instant death. Their haunting wails are forewarning that death is looming, so it is no wonder the banshee instills fear in everyone. Are banshees real then? Of the many traditions and superstitions associated with the Emerald Isle, the legend of the Banshee is by far the most haunting. Tales of the Banshee have been passed down through generations of Irish families for centuries. There are hundreds of reports of sightings of this spooky spirit. With every story, the legend of the Banshee has grown stronger and more elaborate. Do you believe in the enchanting tale of the wailing Banshee? The Banshee, or as we said, woman of the fairy folk, as she is known in Ireland, has many names. As we said, the little washerwoman, the hag of the mist, the hag of the black head. She takes 3 forms, mainly: that of a young and comely maiden, a matron of full and generous figure, or that of a wretched old crone, and is dressed in red or white, or as the occasion calls for it, in the shrouds of the dead. Some see the similarities between her legend and those of the fabled battle witches of the Tuatha Dé, the 3 who are one: Bob, Mocha and Morrigan. Although she may even appear as a creature of the fields, a stoat, a hare, a weasel or a crow. Still, no matter what shape she takes, her coming always foretells doom and death, disaster and dismay. Brian Boru, hero of Ireland and conqueror of the Vikings, although he himself was a Christian man, was said to have spent much of his last battle praying in his tent, because he had told his page that Avil of Craiglia had come to him the night before and spoken to him of his death. And so, indeed, he did die that day. So who is the most famous Banshee? There are few figures in Irish mythology that capture the imagination quite like the goddess Cliona. Said to have been the most beautiful woman in the world, Cliona is the goddess of love and the queen of the banshees in Ireland. She herself is considered a powerful banshee, and her realm is South Munster, particularly County Cork, where the tales of her deeds are deeply rooted in the folklore of the area. The stories of Cliona are fascinating in their contrasting tones and really add to the sense of intrigue that surrounds her. In some, she is a loving figure, while in others, she is dark and dangerous. This mixture of representation makes her one of the most interesting Irish mythological figures. Cliona lived in the divine realm of Tír na nÓg and had 3 brightly coloured birds which always surrounded her. The birds were in possession of magical healing powers, having eaten apples from one of the sacred trees in Tír na nÓg. The story goes that if you were afflicted with sickness or injury, the birds would sing to you and lull you to sleep. Upon awakening, your ailment would be healed. In many illustrations of Cliona, the birds are represented as parrots or other exotic birds. However, I prefer to think of them as colourful little songbirds that are common in the Irish countryside, like the robin, the blue tit, the linnet, or the goldfinch. Cliona and Ciabháin is an interesting story. Of course, no tale from Irish mythology would be complete without a tragic love story, and this one is no different. Cliona was one of the Tuatha Dé, an ancient Irish race of beings who were seen as gods and lived in Ireland before anyone else arrived on her shores. She was seen as queen of the banshees and is known for being one of the most beautiful beings that ever was. One day, a human named Ciabháin stumbled upon the beautiful Cliona, and they instantly fell madly in love with each other. Such was her love for Ciabháin that she stayed in the mortal world to be with her mortal love. As they journeyed together around the island of Ireland, Cliona and Kievan stopped to rest in a small harbour on the west coast of Cork, a place named Glondor. Unbeknownst to them, they had journeyed too far into the territory of the sea god Monomaclear. Kievan heard this beautiful music faintly in the distance. It was as if it was dancing above the sea waves. Mesmerised, he wanted to swim out to see what it was, but Cliona stopped him. She said it was too dangerous for a mere human, but she herself moved closer. Suddenly Cliona entered into a trance and moved further and further into the water. It wasn't mere music, but a spell to lure the Banshee Queen into the ocean. The music grew louder and louder, and suddenly Cliona closed her eyes and was put into a dreamlike state. Defenceless, a wave as big as the cliffs swept her away, and poor Kievan, her new love, was unable to reach her. To this day, Glondor Harbour Tide is named Thun Cliona, or Cliona's wave. Indeed, every time a thunderous wave breaks on the seashore, her memory rises from our island's history, echoing from the mythical era that, although now at an end, is never forgotten. I know this love story doesn't have a happy ending. However, imagine the love they had for Cliona to leave everything to be with Kievan. What a love indeed. Another story of Cliona is connected to the Blarney Stone. One of the most famous of Cliona tales is the legend of the Blarney Stone, one of Ireland's most important heritage sites. In this tale, Cormac McCarthy was building his castle when he became involved in a lawsuit. He was at a loss for what to do and begged Cliona to help him get out of the mess. Taking pity on him, she came to him in a dream and instructed him to kiss the first stone that he found in the morning as he made his way to court. Cormac did as he was told and made his way to court. Here he pleaded his case with such eloquence and plausibility that he won easily. So the impartment of this so-called gift of the gab became the power of the Blarney Stone. McCarthy was so pleased that he had the stone set in the wall of Blarney Castle, where to this day thousands of people visit every year to kiss the stone and get Cliona's gift for themselves. There are plenty of other tales of Cliona's rich mythology. She is said to have lured countless young men to their deaths, using her beauty to entice them down to the seashore, where they drowned. This may have given rise to the superstition that it was unlucky to see a woman before you set out to sea. Cliona is also associated with many of the old families of Munster, such as the McCarthys, the O'Donovans, the O'Collins. It is thought that these old families are the only ones that might hear her wail of the Banshee upon their death, though this is said not to have happened for many generations. By tradition, she appears before the death of one of the High Milesian race, but she is not too dainty to feast on the terror of others, as Richard de Clare found out in the 14th century. As he marched towards his outnumbered enemies, full confidence of a swift victory, his force came upon a grim and wizened old woman, washing armour and fine robes, all stained with blood, in a swift running river. Calling one of his local men to speak to her, he heard that she was the woman of the waters of misery, who made her home in the misted mounds of the fairies. But she was one of the tribes of hell, and invited him thence, from the green earth upon which he walked. Soon, she said, they would dwell in the same land. And sure enough, de Clare perished in the battle, and all his men were scattered. And to this day, the people of the area tell of Unveiling and the 25 handmaidens who reddened the water when trouble nears. Centuries before, tales are told of another would-be conqueror, Prince Donogh O'Brien, who sought rulership of the land around Loch Rask. They looked on the shining mere and they saw the monstrous and distorted form of a lone ancient hag that stooped over the Brightlock shore. She was thatched with elf locks, foxy grey and rough like heather, matted like a long sea wrack, a bossy, wrinkled, ulcered brow. The hairs of her eyebrows were like fishhooks. Bleared, watery eyes peered with malignant fire between red lips, inflamed lids. She had a great blue nose, flattened and vivid, livid lips and stubbly beard. The hag was washing human limbs and heads with gory weapons and clothes, till the waters were defiled with blood, brains and floating hair. Donnacha at last spoke. What is your name and race, and whose kin are these maltreated dead? She replied, I'm Brona of the Burren, of the Tuatha Danann. This slaughtered heap is your army's heads, your own is in the middle. The angry men raised their javelins, but she rose in the wind, yelling more and more words of woe until she vanished. Pay her no mind, said Donnacha. She is a friendly Bob of Cairn Turlough. The army hurried on to the ridge of the abbey, where Donnacha and all his kindred, save one brother, were slain before evening. In other forms, she is best known by her distinctive wailing, described in the south as a low, melodious song, in the north the clapping of two birds, and in the east the shriek of a woman or an owl. Not that one should imagine the Banshee is confined to Ireland, for she has been known to follow families abroad and dog their footsteps in other countries. A party of visitors were gathered together on the deck of a private yacht in one of the Italian lakes in the 19th century. And during a lull in the conversation, one of them, a colonel, said to the owner, Count, who is that queer-looking woman you have on board? The Count replied that there was nobody except the ladies present and the stewardess. But the speaker protested that he was correct, and suddenly, with a scream of horror, he placed his hands before his eyes and exclaimed, Oh my God, what a face! For some time he was overcome with terror, and at length reluctantly looked up and cried, Thank heavens it's gone. What was it? Asked the Count. Nothing human, replied the colonel. Nothing belonging to this world. It's a woman of no earthly type, with a queer-shaped, gleaming face, a mass of red hair and eyes that would have been beautiful but for their expression, which was hellish. She had on a green hood, after the fashion of an Irish peasant. An American lady present suggested that the depiction tallied with that of the Banshee, upon which the Count said, I am an O'Neill. At least I am descended from one. My family's name, little more than a century ago, was O'Neill. My great-grandfather served in the Irish Brigade, and on its dissolution, at the time of the French Revolution, had the good fortune to escape the general massacre of officers, and in company with an O'Brien and a Maguire fled across the frontier and settled in Italy. On his death, his son, who had been born in Italy and was far more Italian than Irish, changed his name to Nilsini, by which name the family has been known ever since. But for all that, we are Irish. The Banshee was yours then, cried the colonel. What exactly does it mean? It means, the Count replied solemnly, that death of someone very closely associated with me. Pray heaven it's not my wife or daughter. He needn't have worried, for he was struck dead by a heart attack within 2 hours. As well as warning families of an upcoming death, the Banshee also liked to cry at the crowning of a true king. One reported case of this happened on the crowning of the legendary Brian Boru, who overthrew the O'Neills and began the O'Brien dynasty. Possibly the only example of a human Banshee appearance was in 1437, when a woman purporting to be a seer approached King James I of Scotland and correctly predicted his murder at the instigation of the Earl of Atholl. In 1801, the Banshee paid a visit to the Commander-in-Chief of the British forces in Ireland. He had attended a party at Dublin Castle and invited a few guests back home to Mount Kennedy, County Wicklow afterwards. These guests, Sir Jonah Barrington and his wife, woke up at 2:30 a.m. to what he described as a plaintive sounds coming outside his window. His wife and a maid were also awoken by it, and the sound later turned into the name Rossmore, being screeched 3 times. The next morning, they were told that a servant, having heard odd sounds from Rossmore's room at 2:30 a.m, entered to find him dying. So, with all these, do you believe in the Banshee? Strangely, many people in Ireland who are not otherwise superstitious or in any way believe in anything supernatural are convinced of the validity of a lot of stories about the Banshee. Well, I hope you enjoyed that look at the Banshee. If you're still with us at this point, it's a fair bet that you're interested in Irish mythology. If you are, you might enjoy my book, The Chosen. The Chosen is a book about a young witch who finds herself being made immortal by the Tuatha Dé Danann to fight their battles on this plane. It introduces a considerable amount of mythological characters, including the Banshee, and also characters like vampires, werewolves, etc. And it is set against the historical background of the 1798 rebellion. If that's the kind of novel that would interest you, check out the link below. I will leave the link to purchase it on Amazon, both the UK and the US Amazon. Let us know in the comments if you've had any experience with any kind of supernatural encounter that could be described as a Banshee encounter, or any other, or if you believe in the Banshee at all or not. We'd also be interested to hear from you if there is any aspect of Irish history and Irish mythology in particular that you'd like us to cover. But until then, slán agus beannacht.